the way he writes those out are. Because someone, like I said, Krakoa, he'll often write it in like two lines, but then like other things he'll write out and he'll do the underscore for the space. So I'm not sure. I'm sure it's just something to look cool,
No,
probably.
I worked in graphic design, and I had a boss who um, was big on the same sort of style of like breaking type to the point where it's sort of illegible. It no longer works as far as conveying meaning. It's mostly working as a design element. But
Right.
the problem with that is it's arbitrary. They have a system of rules that make sense in their head, but they're very hard to tease out. But you seem to always get it wrong.
Yeah, well, I feel like that's how you always get those like. I'm trying to think of examples, but those like failure designs. There's like a subreddit for them where it's
Oh,
like the word, if you read it regular, it doesn't make sense, but to the person who designed it, in their head, they're probably like, "Oh, I see. I'm going for this." It's like the anal
it'll be
rapist.
it'll be a sentence that goes across like a horizontal, and like in theory they're supposed to read it this way, but the other way it makes a dirty reference.
Yeah, I just saw one that was like McDonald's was selling ice, so they had the big M, and then they had ice, so it looked like mice.
Which also completely feasible.
Yeah, I would buy mice. It is,
Oh,
man.
oh, my summer vacation.
I I saw it in previews, and then
Who passes
I
up on that?
saw our store wasn't getting a copy in, so I ordered it. Not really knowing what it was, so I guess if it ties into our X-Men, the tournament to choose the next king of the island is about to begin. The rules are simple: whoever comes first loses.
Oh, that's a copy editor who knew that
Participating
they
warriors.
understood the assignment.
Well, I was like, is that like a double entendre? Because like
Hey,
the
this is a
sword on
family
the
show.
cover is clearly like supposed to look like a dick, but I think it's a sword. But it says participating warriors protect their mighty swords with armor that grows larger and more elaborate with each tournament. But one warrior has returned from studying abroad with a technique certain to force a pleasurable eruption. Is there a competitor alive able to withstand it, or is this deft warrior destined to become a king? So I don't know. I think I have to read this tonight. Uh, I don't
uh,
know. Sublime Publishing. Yeah.
I saw a friend posted that, and I saw the character sheet for the main guy.
Yeah, they
Um,
look cool, right?
yeah, no, they do. I will say though, I'll give points to the copy editor for the lead off double entendre, but I'm gonna ding some points because he doesn't call them tusks. Like I feel like it's right there.
Yeah. I mean, the people look cool. It reminds me very much of who's that guy he did like DC work, but he does like erotic comics online. I think they're like Sunspot or something.
Yeah, I know the guy you're talking about.
I think it begins with an S, but I can't think of it.
Um, I'm not.
He did he did Aquaman, right?
Yes, it's Sir Jack. Yeah, he did a great. In fact,
No, it's
like
not.
that was like this sort of gold rush of like Aquaman covers because he was like floating around swimming with like sea turtles. They were fucking gorgeous. Sir Jack. Really, there's a few that I follow. Oliver. Forgive me if I get it wrong. I believe it's Oliver Coipel.
Yeah,
So he
yeah.
has two
He did a lot of Marvel stuff.
ton of Marvel stuff. I think House of M probably his most known. So he's got two Instagrams. One is like his art, which is phenomenal. It's fucking gorgeous. And then another one is his nudes, which it's kind of like if you like his Thor, you're not gonna dislike his nudes. Like, but I think he was getting grief for having it, having them run with next to the superheroes. There you go. There's our boy.
Copial throne.
Making the nuns' hearts flutter.
Yeah, I wish they would do that more. Like, I wish they would do like figures in the style of like the comic design. Like a lot of times they're like adapting like the look, but they're not like this is clearly like if you look at that face.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
Like,
although the Bill Sienkiewicz New Mutants line would be, how do you? It's like tough to pull off. I mean, the Majura,
like this fucking weird abstract boy.
His warlock is bonkers. The Majura X-Men though would be super awesome. So for the people following along at home, if you are listening live, I finally get to use my bookmark. Feel free to comment along in the chat. If you also are booking your summer vacation for Dick Fight Island, let me know. We'll meet up. Maybe we'll tussle.
Sure, filling up fast. So you better get get on it. Man, this might be the first episode I have notes. And
holy shit! Me too.
Yeah, and I had to look it up to make sure, but I feel very much like Frank Costanza in the Festivus. So I don't have grievances, but I got a lot of thoughts with you people, and now you're gonna hear about it. I was just reading this book, and I was like, oh man! And then I went through and opened a Google Doc and was like making notes.
So this is a strange usually for first-time listeners, greatest comic book of all time. We said Kyle picks a comic, I pick a comic, I read his, he reads mine, and we chat about it. Usually it's the greatest comic book of all time that we read that week. And then we thumb wrestle over which one was the best. But this time around, much more like with the Secret Invasion when we did a few months or so back, when X of Swords was running, longtime listeners, first-time callers, will recall that when X of Swords was actually running in real time, we were chatting about it. I was reading it and Kyle wasn't. I had missed Hoxpox in real time, but kind of followed X of Swords, which is nice because you don't get it spoiled and like a lot of stuff comes to you fresh. And we had talked about doing this very thing, like maybe we would talk about it, and lo and behold, the cards aligned and it's happened.
Yeah, but it is very much like Secret Invasion, where we kept just bringing it up on various things, and I remember we talked about Hoxpox, and then you said you were I don't remember how we got on top of what you were currently reading, and I was surprised you were reading X-Men concurrent, and you were saying you were reading X of Swords, and I was like, I don't know what that is. I've been waiting for them to collect. I bought the Hoxpox hardcover, read that, loved it. So I've been waiting for them to just collect it all so I can read it, because I feel like if I'm going to read a Hickman book or a Hickman directed book, I want it all laid out for me. And then when I heard they were doing X of Swords, I thought it was just a play on words or something. I didn't realize it was going to be a story about swords. And then you casually mentioned, oh no, they have swords. They have 10 swords.
No. I did not casually mention. I fully, because it's, again, like when you hear, and we were saying it wrong, I looked it up on the Wikipedia page. It is pronounced Ten of Swords, which I'm going to say, I get it. It's a reference to the tarot card, but we are talking about the X-Men. It is X of Swords. This is a missed opportunity. Someone should be fired over this.
Well, either way, I mean, it's such a brilliant idea because of the X-Men, and then using the tarot cards, which I know it's brought up. I was gonna bring it out, and maybe for part 2, I'll read through Hoxpox again or skim it. I'm not gonna read all of that, but I know they use tarot cards in there in some fashion. Like it's brought up previously.
If you read the
And the way it's
back
kind of
matter,
interwoven in this is brilliant.
if you read the back matter, one of the writers, Trini Howard, I think, is a tarot. I don't want to say she's a fortune teller. I believe she's a tarot specialist, or maybe she's a fortune teller. I don't know her life, but so I think it would seem like if that's a resource you have, like yeah, you bring it in whenever. Let's stick a pen in that because I have comments to say about tarot card readings, but we'll get to that. But no, like you, I thought Ten of Swords meant swords were like metaphorically the champions were going to be called swords, but then they were like, no, they're literally going to go get swords and fight with swords. And I was like, this is the one I chose to come back in on.
I didn't even think it was going to be like a literal tournament type thing. So I guess we should say that I think it covers 22 chapters.
22 chapters.
For we were going to initially cover all of it, and I think as I was reading it and you were revisiting it, we decided maybe we should break it up because this is a dense motherfucker. So I think we'll get to probably around 11 or 12, which I think 12 is the feast, which I only started on because I didn't know what we were going to do. 11 is the kind of culmination of everyone getting their swords and coming together at
finally they relieve magic.
The Citadel, right?
Yeah. Starlight Citadel, right?
Yeah. That's my big. If I had one, and we'll get into it. If I have one complaint for this book, and maybe my only complaint is the trope they continue throughout of people just hanging out at that that marker. Yeah. I mean, it's cool to see. It's cool to see it, but I like they don't establish time in this. I guess they do with like how long they have to get ready, but like I just picture like Wolverine and Magic sitting there for like a week. Like, is anyone coming? Like, what's going on here?
Have they showered? Like, no. Do they go get food? Do people bring it?
Do they shower on cook? I guess they would have to. I feel like there's like some magic mutant that's like shower guy.
Yeah. Like, also, if Krakoa does not have plumbing, Emma Frost isn't there. Like, this is not a girl who goes camping.
Yeah, you can assume if Frost and Mr. Sinister are there. Yeah. They have the finer things in life.
So where do you want to start?
I guess before, I mean, if anyone. So so briefly, from my understanding, again, I've only read Hoxpox. I'm kind of chosen to, again, wait till these things are collected. I know Marvel's done a good job of putting out pretty much a trade every month, collecting every X book that has come out that month in order, which I think is actually pretty brilliant that they've done, especially because they're going to catch some fools who are going to buy both. Not this fool. I'll wait. But it's killing me because I want to read it. But the idea, mutants establish a new world home for their own in Krakoa, which is this living island, which they used. I don't know. I don't understand. I remember I was a big fan of Wolverine and the X-Men, the comic by Aaron, and he was a big character in Krakoa. I believe he came to the school or the school was built on top of it. I don't remember specifics, but he has been like a previous character. But either way, they make a deal with Krakoa and they build this mutant utopia for maybe the 10th time in X-Men history.
I was going to say, no, that's a different utopia.
Yeah, but this time they have a council. It seems like a culmination of everything, kind of every author's hopes and dreams and all that stuff. And even the villains are there, and it's this kind of land for all mutants, and it's very much a Hickman future utopia, like you've seen in a lot of his books where he tries to get there. Like, I mean, they have resurrections; they're able to bring any mutant back. Like they want for nothing really. They have their own form of punishment and government. They don't kill each other. It's just like really interesting concepts they cover in Hoxpox, and with the weird Professor X. The Moira stuff is really interesting, but so like that in itself is really interesting. But I was worried going into this. You don't really need to know any of that except for that mutants are now living on Krakoa and they have their own like a kind of continent or whatever to themselves. Like they have their own, they're self-governing, and the world recognizes that. But
Yeah.
outside of that, it's pretty much all you need to know. They do a good job of kind of bare minimum. This is a like standalone ish story, I think.
Yeah, and then so a main feature of the story is a sort of back history of Krakoa that we haven't had yet. So I think when we first meet Krakoa, like, isn't he from Giant X-Men #1? Like, aren't they on this island? And it turns out the island itself is a mutant.
I believe so.
And so, like, he was. I should say, is it a he or an it? It was a. They were a um, uh, sort of an antagonist, and then maybe silly. And I think like every modern age writer's favorite gimmick of taking a silly thing and like how do we make it cool, which like Hickman goes crazy with, especially with the 5 characters who are in charge of resurrections. Um, so it's worth noting Krakoa Island floating in the Pacific, but also like highly linked to a series of other world like dimensions. So it's like partially in the world as we know it, the Earth, and then partially part of this big like a giant dimensional cheese wheel where I think at the very center sits sometimes called Otherworld, sometimes called Avalon, which characters, which readers familiar with Captain Britain will recall. I believe the Starlight Citadel is the home of Opal Luna Saturnine, who is the omniversal magistrix, which is a position that is clearly important but never really explained.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And then, like, if you can imagine this cheese wheel, at the very center is the Starlight Citadel, and then the wedges of cheese surrounding it are the different territories, which I think are a lot of the fun of the. The thing that I think Hickman, he's had a long history with Marvel and like some hits and some misses. But I think what he sort of like has done since he's come back on the and been given the mutants is to say like, look, I'm interested in the mutants, but I am here to tell my sort of like high fantasy space opera stories, and I'm going to graft the mutants onto them. But mostly this is I'm creating these worlds that I want to play in, and you are along for the ride, which I think is half the secret, like to the charm of the books now, is that like their scope is insane, which is great. Like taking the mutants like out of San Francisco and putting them on the magical netherworld does kind of bring out like like new and different mutants get to be in the spotlight, and other characters get to are suddenly fun and more interesting. Like you're saying, the Quiet Council is a great conceit. Like the Resurrectionists are a great conceit. Other characters who have historically been just sort of adversaries, like Mr. Sinister and Apocalypse are now, weird key players in the mutant future. Anyway, so the cheese wheel also represents this sort of like far-reaching Jonathan Hickman like cosmoscope. Which includes some things we know, and then some things are fully new.
Yeah, there's like so around, and of course there's diagrams. It's a Hickman book. There's fair courts and foul courts, and they're evenly distributed. And then, yeah, like you said, which is interesting, and I would love to know. Again, I don't. I think it comes in around halfway through. It's maybe like 8 or 9 issues into the X-Men stuff with all the X-Men titles. So the idea that and I took notes on this, that the world was originally was Amenth, right? And then
yes.
Was that it? And then it was split
No,
into
it's Iraq.
Krakoa.
Is it Araka and Krakoa? And the original was Okara.
Right. And then that was split, and then there's Amenth. Yeah. So the idea that on the kind of the gateway off the Citadel, are these two worlds, which are Earth, which is Krakoa is kind of the gateway, the connector, the Venn diagram to the Citadel, or
Hold on,
that's.
you're not. We can't see your. Are you pointing to a diagram?
Oh no, I mean I
Oh.
could, but
Oh. There you go.
but yeah, the other world, and then for shit, Amos, Arcoa is their Krakoa. So at some point, in the history of this new history of X Men is the mutants are from there, and this world splits, and that's like kind of the first issue. But the idea of centering making Krakoa, which already is this like really interesting idea and concept, and making it even more important as like this ancient like gateway to a larger and bigger history of the Marvel universe is interesting in itself. And I think that's what Hickman. I think we were talking about like Hickman coming on to X Men. You know, he did Fantastic Four, he did Avengers. And I think what he does is takes the concept or the broad idea of what people like about these things. You know, Fantastic Four, they like the science, they like the interversal travel, like they like that stuff, and he just builds out what he likes on top of that and tells these stories, which in any other case would be like these high sci-fi concepts that you would picture on like uh a 20,000 AD or an image book. Like you don't picture them in these worlds. Same with Avengers. Like, oh, instead of saving the world, how about we literally save the fabric of time and existence itself? And oh wait, we didn't do it, and now we've created a god, Doom, and like these like ridiculous fucking ideas, and he like serves them up to people who read soup comics, and like he's then done that with the X-Men, where he's kind of boiled it down to the home of the X-Men and what that means and what would their utopia be, and then kind of built that out. But like that's kind of all bubbling as you start the first issue, which in and of itself is then building this ridiculous like backstory and world building and shit that he introduces that he has no plans, or Marvel has no plans on letting him build upon, but he has like he has somewhere all this shit like figured out as to like what this whole thing is, and he only shows you what you need to know, and outside of that he's not going to explain it.
Yeah, that I think you're 1,000% correct, Chris, on all that. And also the not really going to explain it part, I think works sort of well, like works well, and maybe so. Look, Exoswords is great. We wouldn't be talking about it if it wasn't. It's 24 chapters, a lot of moving parts. I think overall tells a coherent story, but there are some bumps in the road. Fair to say. And I think like where the story excels is sort of like is that that mix of like not over explaining his world building, but letting you sort of enjoy the ride of it. And then where sometimes some of the bumps occur, I think, are a little vagueness around what is going on, which especially I think like I think the scale and scope of this, because you it's like a little like the last Godzilla versus Kong, because like as we know, Kong, he is I think like skyscraper high, but as he has to fight Godzilla, he gets a sort of boost and is sometimes like Hong Kong skyscraper high, and then also sometimes maybe 40 stories. So like he's a little like the scope and the scale changes a lot. Like in some cases, these are like Krakoa is like an island floating in the Pacific. In other cases, like these are huge dimensions with dimensional hordes of seething millions. So the camera lens like goes in tight sometimes and full pulls back, and it can be a little bit of a ride going along. I think all of the actual as you say in the first part of the story, we learn about Krakoa. We learn about some of the goings on in these other dimensions. We get to see Apocalypse's ex-wife and kids that he's been a deadbeat dad for, and they are, you know, like from the first chance we get to see them, radically cool looking. In short order, we're introduced to some of the minions of their world. As we know, this is a contest. So like we know our go team Krakoa, like it's the team of mutants, many of whom you can kind of predict are going to be like Logan, Magic, who are going to be on the team. But then their adversaries, like with the exception of if you want to say the Four Horsemen of Apocalypse, which we know in theory because it's going to be death, war, plague, and famine, the rest are like I think completely fresh, right? Like so like you got like about 10 characters like made completely out of whole cloth, which on the one hand is awesome. Some of them are my favorite parts of the story, but on the other hand is like you're taking in a lot really quick.
Yeah, and I think so. If we go kind of issue by issue, I think the way I have the hardcover, which is again Hickman design, so it's laid out. So I think X12 is the prelude, and that's you get the introduction to the history of those worlds, and that's when you kind of find out that Apocalypse has been building this gate on Krakoa to go to the other worlds. Again, what's interesting about that is like Krakoa's all for it because he wants you find out that it's like a split of this world, and I think it was really interesting when you meet. I don't think they name it. Maybe they do, or maybe the name is just Arcoa, but you meet the like counterpoint to that
It's a Raka,
later.
isn't it?
Araka, yeah, these names are gonna be the death.
Well, they're all anagrams of Krakoa. So
yeah,
it's Krakoa, Araka are the two splits, and I think if we sort of gender Krakoa as a male, Araka is the female. So it was a universal. It was an one being split into two, male and female, female-ish. It's both an island and a sentience, I guess, not really a person. And then the combined was the Okara. When it was combined, it was Okara, and then it broke into Krakoa and Araka. And Krakoa, you kind of get the impression that Krakoa is like, yeah, I want to get not just this sort of like lost self, but perhaps like his long lost sweetie.
yeah, that's what because like Krakoa has feels like they have a dog in the fight. Like they
Yeah,
want. I think they even directly say they want to be brought back together. Like they are split. And I mean, like obviously we can't break down all of that first issue, but generally that first issue or 12 of X-Men like pretty much establishes this very broad and basic and quick history of this world, which in itself is again like kind of like you find out like this is almost the birth and origin of mutants like they existed here and they came over with Apocalypse to Earth, and like again you find out his wife and kids, and you understand it from the side of the Summoner and Apocalypse. And again, I guess as we're going through these issues, like I love that later on. I think it's the chapter 11 is you get her side of it.
oh yeah.
You get Genesis' side of it, who is his wife. It does feel it feels like huge in scale. So when I was reading it, I was like, "Fuck, this is like." I was like, "Should I? Is this covered before? Should I have read more?" And like,
Yeah.
there's like this crazy world building. Like, I'm not 100%. I'm still not 100% sure why. Like, I guess I am. Like, why Ameth, Amenth. I always think it's Amenth because it looks like Amenth,
Yeah.
but um, is is marching upon these worlds. But I think you find out through Genesis that they're the person who was originally Annihilation, like those beings and Annihilation itself, the mask thing, wants everything.
Yes.
So later, when she dons the mask, that becomes her goal. So I guess the idea is like those that race, that entity wants to just control everything. So they're slowly taking over what's left of this world, of other worlds, and ostensibly want to march onto Krakoa, which will lead to Earth, and then the end of everything, I guess. It's kind of the broad understanding of what's happening in the beginning.
It's only the end of the world all over again. No, I think a thing that like usually when we do these, like we're sometimes we're sharing books that we really enjoy, who may like maybe not everybody knows about. So like there's a little bit of sort of explaining the plot that you have to do. I think most people I think most of y'all have read this. Like I think you're buckled in and good. So I think like we usually we're like maybe a little more careful around spoilers too, but I think we can sort of like we can assume that you've read this. It's been out a while, and sort of talk about it. Like do like get in under the hood rather than. So what we find out is that in our when we meet Genesis, the ex-wife of Apocalypse, and her children, the Four Horsemen, the original Four Horsemen. Of course, there have been a few. It seems like they are ready to just lay siege. Now that there's this portal connecting Krakoa to Araka, they want to like come through that portal and lay siege to our world, having already sieged theirs. They hold back on Genesis a little bit, and for story reasons. And initially, when we meet the Four Horsemen, we think, "Oh, Apocalypse is reunited with his family. We'll feel good about this." And then they promptly kill him. Opal, Luna, Saturnine steps in at this point. Can't have marauding masses from one dimensional netherworld crossing over into another. So she proposes a contest, and the victors of the contest will determine who can go warring into whose territory. There will be 10 champions on each side. As the story progresses, we learn, as we sort of see from the other point of view, like things weren't so like the horsemen are not necessarily coming warring into our world because they want to just more conquest. They're on the run from a greater evil that has sort of like for the thousands of years that Abin Sur has been here in our dimension, like living it up and enjoying life. They've been like in a non-ending war with an invading horde with the unfortunate name of Annihilation, because I think didn't we already have? Aren't those space people? But you know what?
Yeah, there's the Annihilation wave, and
but because again, like I have the same thing. Like I'm not fully up to I'm not fully up to speed on all the new Hickman innovations. So like I kept as a new contestant on the Conqueror side would appear. That wait, do we? In fact, on our side, I had no idea who Gorgon was. Like who like do I know these people?
He's one of my favorite.
Oh, bad news.
But I feel like I looked at, so at the beginning of the book, it has a like who's who, and there's literally like, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What's 7 times 7? 40. Fuck. That's like always the one I can't do. 7 times 7.
You know what? There's someone screaming at you. Hold on. It's is it 56?
Wait, because 7 times 5. Wait, how would I say that?
Yeah, 7 times 5 is 35. Plus 7 is 42. So it's 49.
The 7. Yeah, that's what. Okay, all right. That's a good question.
Welcome back to MathCast. Today, your math magicians.
It lays out 49 characters, and this is just the people in Krakoa, like that are important to the story. So it's like it's a lot. Like I forgot about Orphan Maker, and I was like, why is Iron Man in this book? But so yeah, I think maybe, and it's not, like when I was first reading it, it felt like almost a disappointment that you take this very large, like world-ending type event that Hickman likes to do, and he always does that. But then, I think what's brilliant about him a lot of times, and he does here, is those type of things don't feel like it's hard to understand those or comprehend those. And I think like that's why I'm like a lot of times like Marvel movies feel like the end isn't really that exciting, like because like it's hard to conceptualize that, and you're like it's not really going to happen. So he takes that and kind of breaks it down into things you can either comprehend or like fight behind. So like in theaters where there was this wave kind of working its way through the multiverses, like they would go incursion to incursion and try and stop it, and it was like taking it like piecemeal versus like we saw with Secret Invasion, where at the end, like I didn't like it was just two sides fighting. Like I mean,
Yeah,
it's fine, but like so like this, where then we just turn it into it's a tournament of 10 people versus 10 people. I'm like, okay, that's interesting, kind of, but it works even on another level because then we go issue by issue, and it intertwines all of the X-Men series, and like it really lets the other creators shine. I don't think there's a bad issue in the kind of fetch quest issues we get for them
yeah.
getting their swords, because like that could be fucking boring. And like each creator, I felt like took a story that centered around a character or a group and really like made it integral to that person and really built upon their character and why either it was important for them to fight or why it was important for them to get the sword, or like it nothing felt like the only one that we'll talk to when we get it. There was one I felt like was kind of quick and I would have liked more, but I think it was more just the concept was interesting. I think the Cable one was one where like it did a lot to build the character and the family dynamic I thought was interesting. But I was like I'm so interested in what happened to the that arc. Like what I want to know more about the Scary and all that shit. That's really cool. And then it's like, okay, let's just close the door real quick and be done with
um, so hold on, you want to like just
it.
really
Yeah,
quickly? Shall we name the ten sword bearers?
sure, yeah, because then we can go kind of their issues.
So uh, hold on, if we can't before we get to that. So I think this is so. There's two things. There are two things that I don't like in stories. Um, there are two things that I think are overused in stories. Uh, and whenever they occur, it's like a well, here we go. So one of them is the tarot card reading, and the other is the mysterious rhyme that's going to give you your future.
Oh yeah.
And Exosword starts off with both. The tarot card reading, I think, for like going into it for a series called Ten of Swords, you have to kind of like you're gonna get like that's gonna be a piece of it. I think that the way they handle the tarot card reading, which I think is in the prologue part, there's a fun bit of mischief with Saturnine where she has sort of like it reminds me of if you saw the Snyder cut, which is not we're not litigating that here, but there's this long process that the Amazons go through to sort of send a signal flare to man's world to let them know that the hordes of apocalypse are on their way. And it's like probably 5 full minutes of movie shooting flaming arrows. It is just a very involved process. And like there's a very similar thing that Saturnine has to employ to get her magic tarot deck. And then when they introduce the cards, like their full page spreads, the name of the card, like Judgment, is in like kind of a full illustration. And I have to say, even though I'm a little allergic to this device, I thought they did it justice. They did it very well. Oh, justice, play on words. They did it very well, and as an added touch, at the end they have the character Taro, who's a Hellion, not the current, but the old ones, the old New Mutants antagonist. And she comes in and she sort of like breaks down what she thinks of the tarot cards in a reading. And so there are two things that I don't like about tarot cards as a kind of literary device. One is that frequently they're kind of look, I'm no expert, but like it's always the hanged man, it's always death. It's always like the 5 or 6, the 5 or 6 tarot cards that everybody knows because they watch TV and movies. And there's a little bit of that here, but there also like it doesn't seem like it never seems, I guess, as a device it never seems like particularly helpful or authentic. Or if you like, I don't go, but if you were going to call up Miss Cleo, and ask questions, I think vague answers like who can say, or yeah, maybe that's the grift, but it just doesn't seem like it doesn't seem to match. It's just a way for the sort of like, it's like when movies have dreams, and you're supposed to like, there's stuff you're supposed to get from the dream, and some of it may be sort of foreshadowing, but mostly it's just like it's a lot of puffed air. I think they do it well this time. And then two, so they handled the tarot card. I although I don't like the device, I thought they handled it nicely. The second part, though, the rhyme is a disaster because they have a rhyme that'll tell you which of the 10 sword bearers are who.
Yeah, I like that that part they kind of pushed through Polaris, so she kind of got her like moment to shine and be a part of the story. And I thought her kind of dealing with the death of Rockslide, the way she comes all together with that, I thought was interesting. But yeah, the enforcement of kind of making these declarations that we are then supposed to interpret of like who's it going to be, like especially the scenes where they're sitting around and like, oh, that's got to be Wolverine, like, and like, okay, and like I get kind of the mixture of the tarot and the rhymes are to build the character, I think, or at least when I was reading it, of Saturnine, who is like the most frustrating character in the book.
Yeah.
Because like obviously she's hard to read for a reason, and it's just like, what the fuck is this lady? Like I mean, obviously know who Saturnine, but like she's just really frustrating, and she frustrates the characters, and that's I think that's quality character writing. Everyone who writes her, but yeah, then you get to that part. It's like, okay, like, all right, now we got to sit and figure this out. And they just do it. So it's like, I'm not even going to bother reading it. Like, they're just going to tell me. So I don't
Can I pause this right there for a second? So a thing that, like, you were saying, you thought it was interesting that I came back on for this one concurrently. And we had discussed in previous episodes, one of the greatest comic books of all time that we read a few weeks back was the Alan Moore Captain Britain run. I think it's fair to say both of us, like, I think we were both like hardcore, like Marvel UK sort of fans, and I think that like the Marvel UK form of the usually centers around Captain Britain and the Captain Britain Corps and his sort of extended secondary characters who pop up in this quite a bit. His brother, who is an insane, crazy person, Jamie Braddock, is one of the regents of one of the cheese wedges. His sister, obviously, is a big part. Saturnine is sort of woven into the Marvel UK myth tapestry. Also, did you see a Fury? There were some Furies that pop up from the.
oh yeah, they had their own like. Shit, what are those things? I just said them. Whatever, their courts or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they were also weirdly depowered because I thought their whole thing was running through universes and killing everybody, but it neither here nor there. Only I love this area of the Marvel universe. I particularly love it because I feel like I love a lot of British comics and a lot of British creators, and their sensibility is really in sync with mine. But I think that's a little bit of the problem. which I think, like, on the one hand, like, this particular miniseries, I think, has a lot of that energy. There's a lot of sort of like silliness for as big as the sort of like the warring factions of dimensional, demon hordes. There's a lot of like hijinks and silliness like afoot, especially once the contest gets going, gets like rip roaring. And like some people like Excalibur is a double-edged sword. Some people love the characters but hate the sort of like the nonsense. As a guy that loves both, are you about to pull out that? Did you get it? Oh, not to brag, but I got the
I'm
other
showing
cover.
in case you're listening to the audio version, I have my Excalibur omnibus, which I haven't opened because I don't have 4 years to read it, but I will.
I got the one with the bursting through the UK flag, the Britannic
variant?
flag. Yeah, which I have to say, I'm gonna scold Marvel on this. Like, there's a beautiful version painted by Alan Davis, and then there's a weirdly colored one where like Rachel's head is pink, and they went with the weirdly colored one, I think, from Marvel Age, and not the beautifully painted one by Alan Davis. And this is a marketing fail, but like that. Say that for another podcast. Either way, love the Marvel UK stuff. It's hard, I think, for some writers to really invest in. And I think like Hickman clearly likes it because he centered it so strongly in the story. But like Saturnine is a great example because she's a character that I don't think anyone understands. No one knows where she fits in this universe. She's a fun character, so why not try to bring her in? But her motivations are, I mean, as near as I can tell, she's like that space queen from Buck Rogers, who is just always trying to like seduce Buck Rogers and always coming up short to Wilma Deering and dying mad about it.
Yeah, and I will say, like, I think kind of what I was talking about earlier with Hickman kind of finding very much like Morrison, and probably why I enjoy the two so much, is like finding the kernel of history or an element of a character or a team and pulling at it to make it something else. Like again, you saw that with I think what he did with other stuff, but like the X-Men and the UK stuff and the Excalibur stuff like isn't something that is generally I feel like explored a lot. Like you could have easily
No.
seen when I first saw Hickman was announced for X-Men, I thought, like that's space stuff. Like why he's just gonna go to space. Like that's his bread and butter. And like he took it the complete opposite direction, made it a very early on a very like condensed story with Krakoa, and then has built it out through kind of the multiverse stuff. But again, taking something that I don't think is covered a lot or is interest like I don't think a lot of people like. Maybe new readers I don't think are hugely interested in Captain Britain and his exploits. But I will say King Jamie is a star of this series, or one of them. So the first up to bat. Well, okay, one thing. So Polaris, she deciphers it or something. I'm not sure, but I will say one thing they take off the table, which I loved, was the resurrections. It kind of it gives obviously it's comics, so death is what it is. But the idea that mutants have come to a point where they can just bring back anybody was an interesting concept, and it kind of like nerfs a lot of threats. But it's like taking that off the table, and not even taking it off where like they can resurrect you, but it's not you, is really interesting. Like it's because you're dying at a point of multiple universes colliding. Like you could be coming back. I don't know. They're like they don't fully understand it, but that's interesting. So
no, it's great, and the stakes are then higher because it's not just
right.
It's not just if we lose, the world's going to get sacked, but also if we lose, we're not coming back.
And I thought early on, like it felt really weird story wise why they would just send in summoner, was it Banshee and that other guy who gets tortured. I forget his name.
Oh, Urok,
Yeah,
Eurus. I don't know
I'm like,
Eurus.
I don't know if that was a team I would send in, but it's it's done to pretty much prove a point that's like, well, and then when the team of with Apocalypse going, they learn that fact. But so the first one up is the most obvious. You can't have a story without X-Men or not X-Men. Well, Wolverine. And again, I was like, ugh, all right, we gotta have a Wolverine story. This is like a really smart, I think, Wolverine
Yeah,
story.
this is great.
Like,
It was one of my
so
favorites.
this one's by was it Benjamin Percy?
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty much him going after. I always say the name wrong. Is it Maramusa?
Muramasa, the Muramasa brother,
Muramasa.
Muramasa blade.
Um, so him pretty much going to find the blade. I love the little interaction with Silver Samurai. I thought that was like,
Yeah,
again, it was these moments like, again, it could be like a silly fetch quest or like something like I gotta go talk to someone and they give it to me. But like even like throwing a 2-page battle with him and really like exploring the character of Wolverine in that small sense, like it wasn't you, it was me, and like I thought that shit was great. And then
I
they,
I,
oh,
I
god,
would. Uh, of all the storyline, there were two that I was sort of highly skeptical of. Like one of them was Wolverine because I have Wolverine fatigue, and so like I went in with my expectations really low. But then, and also I thought it was going to be the very obvious. He's going to go to Japan and he's going to get a Hanzo Harame sword. Like I thought we were going to go down a very predictable path, and then they're like, nope, we're taking him to hell. and it's I thought like also this is I thought kind of one of the first handoffs to another writing different writing teams on the different books, and I thought this one was so exceptional. Like I feel like a thing that can sometimes happen with these large crossovers that are bringing in books from other teams is there's like an unevenness, which will happen here, but this was not like this was a great like this was a great story, and like they nailed it. They nailed it and just had a lot of fun with it too, which I love. Although, is it hell because there's no Mephisto?
well, it's one of the many versions of hell, I guess, because
Who's now one of the
the
most popular
ones
people in
I'm
the Marvel
looking for the
universe?
blade, yeah, it doesn't show up. So yeah, he finds out that the blade, the Muramasa blade, which is named after, as Muramasa, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so he's
Pronunciation on that might be screwy.
yeah. So he is in hell, intertwined with the hand, which was an interesting concept. But this is like where they first bring in your like first look at the otherworld combatant, which what's his name,
Solemn.
Solemn, who is fantastic. Like I
Yeah.
fucking love this dude from an instant. Like I love like hockey motherfuckers, and this guy was great. And like not only that, he's like the type of character which so they team up to get the blade, and then they find out there's two blades, but who is more just kind of an agent of chaos,
Yeah.
unless they like. I mean, he's for his side, but he could like he's more interested in like a battle and kind of somewhat honor and that type of thing. So like I thought it was such a great issue again to establish kind of Wolverine's character in this more abstract journey to get the Muramasa blade, and then they built in kind of added history to the blade and the swordsman who made it, and then also gave us this like really interesting character, which like when the fighting starts, like I'm gonna be interested to see what they did.
Yeah. Also, I think a great counter to Wolverine, who can sometimes suffer from like toxic masculinity,
Yeah.
is a weirdly slinky, sexually ambiguous um, uh, uh, bon vivant.
Yeah, he very much reminded me of like the MCU Loki versus kind of what we get.
Yeah. He strikes me as like he's like a Morrison character. Um,
Yeah.
just like someone you would see in The Invisible, someone who's in it for the well, not just for the walls, but yeah, an agent of chaos. Yeah, no, great character, and just a great that was I'd say in the ramp up to Exosword or Ten of Swords when they're of the accumulating the sword stories, top five or top. You know what? I'd say top two. I have two faves.
Yeah. It's we can figure out maybe at the end we end it. Because then I guess forget, but I do like that Magic is just like okay, I'm involved. Like I'm good. Like
Well,
she gets her stories throughout, but I love that she's just like, all right, I'm down. Like, and it's first one to just like sit there.
the minute you know that there's a I mean from our like for us like when they're like Exo Swords gonna be 10 champions like well there's one
Yeah,
so and they actually like they play that like she's the first one up and there's not even a big like I gotta go get my sword she's locked and loaded from the start and as discussed apparently waiting for people to bring her some parties.
and so the next up is Storm, which is in Marauders number 13, and that's by is it Vita Ayala? I always forget how to say her last name. You know who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
And that is a Storm story, which I was like, oh, I got interested in that. Oh, she's going to Wakanda.
Hmm.
It's fucking great again. Oh my god, like it's so like again they take this small thing of we gotta go get what is it called?
Skybreaker, Stormbreaker.
Yeah, what is it?
It is
Skybreaker. Um
Skybreaker.
yeah. So we gotta go get Skybreaker from the Wakandans, and they turn it into this like character study of Storm and like who she is and was as a character and what she'll do to like fight for her people and really like shows like a lot of time like why she was like the leader of X-Men various times and like the really great relationship like that those final like 2 pages where you like he just shows up T'Challa just shows up and they have that interaction like holy shit it's fucking like heartbreaking and it's so good and like
Yeah. No,
again
it's
it's
a
written in a
well.
way where you can like you don't I think if you know the history then there's that in it but you don't have to and I think they write it in a very brilliant way it's going to be people who are dipping in and out of these series it's so good.
I would also say that like I think Storm as a character in the story is phenomenal throughout. Like I think they do her very well. Her backstory, like the backstory in Wakanda, is like fitting and appropriate. She has to, she kind of puts her in conflict. Like as a character who's built around honor, it puts her in conflict with like her many different allegiance. It was super tasty, and she's I think like one of the highlights throughout.
Yeah, there was again for like the first two were Wolverine and Storm, and I was like, I could see where these are going, and they again went a completely different route, and I thought they were beyond interesting. So the next is so there's no sword attached to this one. The next one in the chapters are the Hellions who get sent to Otherworld to cause a muck to try and stop the other team from getting their swords. This might be my favorite
Absolutely.
issues.
Yeah. The Hellions arc is my favorite as well.
which is to give credit to the writer, and I
It's
wish I
Zeb.
Zeb Wells, yeah, who was an X-Men staple, but this book is like he's always done this. He's able to kind of balance humor and kind of tone and still make it an X-Men book, but the Mr. Sinister shit is so good in this. Uh, Again, this is like this character who's not like generally that interesting. He can be, especially like when Hickman introduced like the clone stuff, but like you get that, and then you get his interpretation of King Jamie.
Yeah,
It's like it's so good, and they don't really do anything. Like they pretty much make their way to other worlds, and that's where it like ends for their part prior to where we're gonna cut off. So, and I don't. I'm wondering too because like where we read into the story, the other team has all their swords, so I don't know what they did, but
um, uh, I don't want to. Obviously, we were fine with spoilers, so it's fine. But just not to spoil the next episode. I think that they're like uh, one of the things I like best about the Hellion stories is like they like tone shift really well because like the first part of the adventure is very merry, and then the second part of the adventure is random. I mean, I think he's got like a tone that he keeps throughout. Like these are like it's sort of like it's. I mean, they're not the Suicide Squad of the X people, but they're essentially the sort of like morally ambiguous characters. I believe that's so. It's Quanon as Psylocke. It's Psylocke. Forgive me for not being fully up to date on Psylocke's current. Uh, she's a really hard character to keep track of. But I believe we have Quanon and we have Betsy, and this Psylocke is Quanon, and Betsy is Captain Britain, and Havoc, who is sort of I think along for the ride, and then like you mentioned the nanny and the orphan maker, who I didn't realize I was missing until I got them. And then I think it's James Proudstar and Impeth is along for the ride, and a total fucking nightmare. But no, what a fun book. I mean, like also Jamie Braddock is not an easy King Jamie is not an easy character, and between him and Sinister, it's not like an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. It's like an absurd creation meets a ridiculous person, and exactly what you expect to happen is what happens. But yeah, no, this was I pitch perfect and really like early on had me sold on the series on the miniseries.
yeah, out of all the books, like I will read all of them because I imagine they're going to collect them all in some sort of collection. Hopefully, kind of because I know a lot of the stories are intertwined, but um, out of the ones that I read to where I'm at in X of Swords, like Hellions is the one I instantly want to go back and read all of.
Absolutely, yeah. Me too.
To see
In fact, I
where.
did.
Oh yeah, that's what you were saying. Yeah, I mean the fact that like Sinister just like is stopping people. Like they're supposed to be incognito, and he's like stopping people like on the street. Like just so you know, I normally have a cape. Normally look like this.
Oh no! The most sinister moment of all is when Sinister raises a clone to send out on the mission so that he,
Right.
in case he gets killed in another world, will not die, and then the clone absolutely refuses. No, the book's a total joy, a total treat. But
And
that, as you
then
said, they're not one of the sword bearers. They're just it's just mayhem, well directed mayhem. Also, great use of a spare character, or not spare, obviously, but like great way to incorporate characters who aren't the sword bearers.
yeah, I get, and I mean something I think we talked about maybe last episode when we were setting up that we are going to be doing this. Like this series in itself is kind of an homage to, I mean, not old, but how X-Men events used to run, where they would run through issues and they would all be part of it, and each creator got to tell their own story, but it was all like, it wasn't a, you can't miss one of these issues. You have to
Right.
get all of it. There are chapters on there for a reason. and which is obviously really difficult to do to capture. I mean, the tone can shift, but to capture the pace of it because you don't want to drop it. And every single one of these guys like clearly understands like Hickman's end goal, and then are able to kind of then filter that through their own. Like no one feels like they're forced to write something they don't want to write or would be out of character for that. And this feels like a Zeb Wells book, but it's still moving the plot forward. At no point is it like sputtering. And then
No,
the
and I
next
think the
one up,
thing
okay.
the thing you said about Polaris is like there's this which I believe that was in the X Factor. I might have it wrong, but it's this great character moment. Like the plot stops for a second, and you just have the sort of character responding to what happened to Rockslide, and like it's I think it's the strength because I think that one is Trini. I might have it wrong. You know what? In fact, I think I'm saying her name wrong. Yeah, I think that's it, but I might. You think you've taken enough notes. But in any case, yeah, I think each of the batches of writers, is working to their strengths and finds a way to sort of incorporate that into the larger story.
Yeah, and then let's look at that's Williams, which is that's another thing. Like on the books, they only put the last names, and there's not. I don't know if there's like a. It's got to be like a chat. Oh, here we go. Jesus Christ. Leah Williams. That's right.
Oh, there you go.
Leah Williams did X Factor, and it is. I think you say Teeny Howard. Tini.
My apologies.
Yeah. The next up is one of our favorites, at least teams. New Mutants, number 13, with Ed Brisson, who is one of my favorite writers. And I haven't read a lot of his Marvel stuff. I've wanted to, I just haven't got into it. And after reading this, I may do that because I didn't know Rod Reese was doing the art. I love, which is so good that he's doing a New Mutants because he's like current day. I don't want to say. I know that's not maybe not even blasphemous because the dude's still around, but like he's the guy I feel that is closest to capturing the feel of Sienkiewicz.
Yeah. Well, hotly contested. But I think yeah, and he's a great fit for New Mutants, and also I think New Mutants on this like you got to go back and read from one. Like it puts them in a fun space. Like putting them up in space. It's been great, and the art's been phenomenal. Like it's also a winner.
This one, I think, is another really interesting one. They could have gone like tons of different routes, but this one is about Doug, who is the literal voice for Krakoa, and it is about Warlock, and tying those two together. Warlock is the sword, and Doug is the wielder. And it's again, this like really like character piece about Doug and his role on Krakoa and like what he means to the mutants, Krakoa, and what also he like sees himself as. Like he wants to participate not only because he is called to do so, but like he wants to prove that he's more than just kind of a translator. Like he wants to really kind of make a difference. But everyone is quite aware that he's going to die. He's awful. And then you get really like fun things with Warlock, but then you also get like Krakoa's perspective and like not wanting to lose Doug as like someone he cares about, but also kind of the voice, like his voice. And like one of the interesting things that Hickman has done is made it clear that like the X-Men respect Krakoa and like he has a voice in all things. Like they are guests, and they do like a good job of kind of weaving that in. So like all around, I think like which could have been a anyone they could have chosen out of New Mutants to have Doug and Warlock in this scenario, and then bring in Magic as like the team leader, essentially, like looking after her team, and like she's like looking after Doug and training him. It was really interesting.
I think that there's a like just a larger arc of like um, character um, resuscitation going on with Doug. Like I think like Krakoa, like a thing that I think you really have to hand it to Hickman for is like he just gave so many sort of weird secondary characters very key roles in the sort of Krakoa hierarchy, and of course the main characters, you know, Scott and Jean and Xavier are all where you expect them to be, but like with the Resurrectionists and like with Doug being the translator, like a lot of these like smaller characters have kind of found a place that they didn't have before. And I think like obviously not just because he's a sword bearer, but like Doug's really a character to watch in this book. Like he goes on a ride.
Right. And they use him like again in very interesting ways, just even throughout. Like he's kind of always like he's always there, he's always around, but he's also on a team, and like he has like roles to play, different things, and I think they do a really good job of juggling that.
Totally.
That's kind of one of the interesting things about the team that is eventually assembled. Like they get Wolverine and Storm kind of out of the way. Like okay, these are the two. Same with Magic, like that we're gonna have, but then like let's explore. They devote the issues, like the single issues, to these really different dynamic people in the stories. Because the next one is it is Cable #5 by Dugan and Phil Noto, or Nato. I never know how to say it.
I think it's Noto. You know what?
What's
We
up?
need that. We need that thread Matt made.
Yeah, yeah. Who I always love and always was like I like or I love, but at times he can seem very like photo realistic. Like he's very good at capturing that. I think he's gotten really good at kind of working in movement and action in it, which I always felt a little stilted previously and stuff I've read. But either way, like his people are always really beautiful. But Cable, Cyclops, and this Jean. I don't. That's the one thing I'm confused with Jean and Hope. But not Hope. Yeah. Is this Jean? I don't know. Do you know at this point?
I
Do you remember?
no, and I'm gonna say that like this is I'm like a little unplugged from like I like old granddaddy Cable. I'm like in the particular way that we see Nate here as sort of like, which is fine. It's fine. It's just not my thing. But like as a sort of insecure young person who is um, not sure of his place on the team and if he's the weak link, and like I a little, and also like I don't love family like Scott and Gene and Nate. Like I don't know. I there's interesting stuff going on. I'm I didn't feel the need to go dig deeper on who this like. I was like, oh, Nate's a kid now. I was like, do I have to look this up on Wikipedia? I'll just skim.
Yeah, I think out of all of them, this is probably my least favorite, just in terms of like the characters. Like
Yeah,
I love Scott. Scott's one of my favorite characters when he's utilized well. I just don't understand like the dynamic. This dynamic is weird. Maybe just I
yeah.
just don't understand it. Like calling him mom and dad, and I was like, is that the young Gene or is Gene back? I don't remember, but we can resurrect. So like I don't know if this is like the teenage Gene that is with. I'm sure it's easily I could look it up, but
Yeah, that's. I mean, can't we? I've been curious about Phoenix in the resurrection pools, only because, like, it feels like that's something they're not going to be able to keep their hands off of for too long. But But so yeah, no, I'm sorry. I don't know which Jean this is. Except that she does seem to be like. This doesn't seem like. Yeah, this doesn't seem like a Jean. Like, I'm not. I don't know this girl.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to make sure she's like of age with Scott, if that's what. But either way, I'm sure that's well covered. But again, I think they did something interesting. While it's like my least favorite character wise, you take Cable, who already has a sword, so he doesn't have to go find it,
Yeah.
and they give him the story about confidence, and they set it on a far more interesting story about the peak being taken over by like this like techno type virus, and it is like real creepy. Like, oh, like they notice like, oh, this door is like welded shut and it's hastily done, and where is everybody? And then they run into like she runs into the one guy with no eyes and like the thing carved in his head, and like holy shit, this is awesome. And then they're just like, oh, Cable, take your sword out, it'll be okay. And then it ends. So like I think it was like I was like a huge story they introduced, and then there's like, oh, never mind. But I do like that they used it to just explore Cable, like as the person with already their sword. They used it to explore his confidence with it, even though they undercut it several times with whatever Scott's doing in secret.
Yeah. No. Also, like I'm gonna. So character recovery for Doug. A little bit of character assassination with Scott. Like Scott is the leader of the X-Men. I mean, Scott has a role as the leader of the X-Men that I think he's earned, and there's a lot of that gets undermined by his role as a family man. And I just don't know who's screaming for, you know, this version of the Greys.
You don't want smiling. So I like
Yeah.
the moment where they're like, why are you all smiling? But yeah, because like I always like that he is, and again, I don't know how it is prior to this, but I have always enjoyed like he is like the always leader, like no matter
Yeah.
what, like he will try and be the leader, whether it's good or bad, like whatever he needs to do. I've enjoyed it. I like the Scott was right stuff and all of that.
Yeah, a little
Yeah,
of that I think gets undermined in the next part of the story, but we'll get to that when we get to that.
yeah. Next up is Excalibur number 13. This one is by Howard. Um, and this one is also fantastic. They're all fantastic. But this one, like again, it was kind of out of nowhere. This is like like I don't know, how would you describe this one? This one's dense.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's a lot of backstory with the Captain Britain Corps, or yeah, the Corps, and then the sort of status of Captain Britain, because they brought Betsy back. They made Betsy Captain Britain. Did not go well the last time. I think like of all her different personas, that's the one she might want to avoid. So also Brian's status as a mutant, I'm not sure where they've landed on that. Like, is he a mutant or is he a magically empowered? Which I don't. So, and then also this has like a little more um, Saturnine in her court. It's there's a lot going on here. I'm there's. I'm glad to see Betsy back. I don't know, and I think it gets sort of resolved through this course of the story. I don't know how much I love her as a Captain Britain. And then I think there's a lot of set like table setting going on here for the Green Lantern, or I'm sorry, the Captain. Oh boy, that was big. For the Captain Britain Corps, which is in Absentia at the start, and obviously, I mean, not obviously, spoiler, is back in a big way by the end. So I think that there's just a lot of like table setting going on here, but it's still a fun ride.
Yeah, I think early in the issue, it is like a lot of like info dumping, but I think done well. Like I really like the dynamic between uh, Betsy and um, Jamie and Betsy and Brian, and like that whole duo, like that family drama stuff is like really interesting, which is interesting coming off the previous issue where I could care less about Scott and Nate and
Yeah.
Gene, but this one is interesting in the way like it feels like it is like a almost a kind of like what are those called, like Agatha Christie type. Like there's a lot of things set up, and in the end, all the dominoes fall to like work out the way they kind of wanted it to. Um, and I think you get like really great moments with Brian picking up the sword again, and
Mm.
Betsy is it in this one? Yeah, she destroys the amulet, and like all of that kind of coming together at the end, and how they get the what does she have, the sword of light,
Starlight.
starlight.
Starlight Sword.
Was interesting. Like it's I was like, oh, this is only one issue. It's like a lot of stuff in there, but
I think the
I think it's
Excalibur
really
was
good.
the preview for the series. So like
Yeah,
instead of having two issues to tell the story, they like their what would have been their first issue was setting up X of Swords. I think if I might have that wrong, but I think.
but yeah, I thought like again, I taking that and then again really playing on kind of the history of it. They bring in the what is it, the current corpse. Who did they kill? Jubilee?
No. Um, you know what? I'm not sure.
Right? Jamie has them all. Unless that was like a trick, I don't know.
Oh no! You know what? I have to reread that because there's a um, there's a switcheroo coming up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sure there was more. I was assuming not because it's like a small panel at the bottom. They don't show it, and it just says Jubilee. I was like, I don't think they would kill
No,
Jubilee
no,
off that way.
no, no. In fact, she's got she's a bigger part of the end. She comes in strong in the end.
I do, yeah, I do like that they. That's another series. I was like, I kind of want to read this. I want to know why Jubilee has uh, Union Jack sunglasses and looking cool. Um,
And a dragon.
yeah, this is dope. This is a cool. Everyone in there look like Rogue's outfit is fucking awesome. Who's the other one? Because it's Rogue, Gambit, Jubilee. Who's the other one?
It's uh, it is.
Okay.
Hold on a second. Now's a good time to discuss our. Um, I don't. Hold on. I'm looking on the. It doesn't mention. Hold on. Other characters. Oh wait, is that someone is pretending to be somebody else? Because there's a lady. There's a dead ghost plaguing Gambit.
No.
Um, there or what? I don't quite know
I'm
her
trying to think who
deal.
that would be. They have like a scarf.
I think is that Celine.
No.
Oh, he, Sorry, I have to revisit this. And no, there's a ghost bedeviling Gambit and getting him into mischief that will come out a little bit later. But I think it might be Celine, but I might have that wrong. But I'll confirm that. Do you want to move to the next?
Yeah. Next one is back to Hickman, X-Men 13, part 10, which kind of puts a wrap on a lot of this. This is one where they include Gorgon, but he doesn't really get a story, which I like because Gorgon is generally just up for sword battles. Like if he can use his sword. So he's like a character I know a lot from. Hickman used him quite extensively in Secret Warriors. He was teamed with Hydra. He fought Phobos. Like I think he had the Grass Cutter, and I think Phobos had God Killer. And he was just like a really generally an interesting antagonist. But
He
I
is
did a
both in this. It's God Killer and Grass Killer, or
yeah, he was both in
Grass
this.
Cutter and God. Yeah.
And they're like the only swords that can kill gods. Or like kind of the Greek gods, like he uses it to kill Ares, to try to kill Ares and so forth. I had Alexis Zirit way back. I was doing commissions, and I had got a Gorgon one from him,
Oh,
and
nice.
it got lost in the mail. But luckily, Alexis is a super nice dude and sent me a bunch of like other stuff. But it's like I just want to know what that looked like. I don't. He didn't take a picture of it. I was like, I just want to know what his drawing of Gorgon would have been. But anyway, so this story follows Apocalypse, his attempt to heal, and then it's him getting his sword. But you get a really again, the story is like to take Apocalypse, who's a character who has been explored, I think, to death, and in a such an interesting way in this. Like he's really they give a lot of humanity to Apocalypse and like his backstory and his drive. Like you almost kind of get like the point of Apocalypse was always to build a world for mutants and eliminate mankind and like survival of the fittest, and like they kind of give a point to that in this, like at least a drive and an understanding for that. And um, then he just goes and gets the scarab sword,
Which is a badass looking sword.
with Gorgon. Yeah, with Gorgon who's just there and says that looks like a sharp blade. And he's just there.
So what did you like? I really loved this sort of characterization of Apocalypse.
Yeah,
I think this might be my favorite of him.
I like that you kind of get you got facets of him. Like you get the person who's kind of driven to save and lift up mutants, but you get like a I don't want to say family man, but you get someone who clearly is like, I think in the next two issues when he confronts Genesis, like you get someone who was kind of driven also by his family and being reunited them, but you get like a scared Apocalypse at points, which was interesting. Like one on certain death and like also making sacrifices for other mutants. Like it is such a kind of dynamic story for him and nuanced. And again, I love that used to do like world building, like where we see what the actual annihilation mask is. Like when you put it on,
Yeah.
like it just like eating you and killing you, and like it's just passed from like one person to the next. Like it's like very Hickman-esque, little nuanced thing he introduces.
I yeah. Also, like hats fucking off to Pepe. You know, for a guy who claimed to take a lot of notes, I'm sure come on short with him. It's Pepe. Um,
What are you talking about? The artist?
yeah.
Pepe was Loraza? Loraz?
Laraza. Hey
Loraz?
Pepe, we're sorry for pronouncing your name poorly. Tune in or chime in on the Matt Leggetti thread, please. The art's phenomenal, but the design is so great. Like all these sort of bizarre, all these huge masks and all these bizarre fish-headed people, like the weird alien, or I shouldn't say weird, the interesting-looking aliens in the Starlight Citadel, the demon hordes in Amayanth. Oh, I'm a hick from Amayanth, the Amon. Demons, like you were saying about the Annihilation Mask, like the character design in this is so freaking great, and just also feels like I just like nothing I've seen. Like this just all feels so fresh and different and new, and like he did so much. Like in those
Yeah.
first couple of stories, like it's just page after page of just new, more bizarre looking character. It's
There
just a total treat.
there is a moment, I think it's in 2 issues. So as this one ends, what that goes to, the next one is X of Swords Status, which is a one shot, part 11. And it is in that issue you see the representatives from Mercator,
Yeah.
and they're these like they're in shadow, and they're these like robed figures with like T hammerheads,
Yeah.
and they don't talk, and they just keep coming there, and they don't say anything. But I was like, what the like? Not only is this design fucking awesome, but like I want to know what the fuck is that story? Like those guys are so awesome, and like this book is just like littered with that, where you'll see like a character and they'll like mention it, and then like it just that inhabits this world. So like Hickman's like, I'm not gonna take time to explain it unless it needs to be. So like, okay, like moving on. Like they even say like stop coming to these if you're not gonna do anything. And but that's like it. Like, okay. So
No,
yeah,
in fact, I having been given a sample of the cheese wheel, I want more of the cheese wheel.
yeah,
Because it's not like the
yeah,
weird
the crooked
marketplace.
market. Like I want
Oh my
more.
god, I know, right? With
Yeah,
Mad Jim Jaspers running the show. No, I want only want more and more and more of that.
yeah, and we going back quickly, like the Apocalypse design is so good in this because he has like the metals,
Oh yeah.
and they like make a concerted effort to like always draw him in shadow, except for like there are several times where like, again, like you see him scared or like surprised, and like they choose then to kind of draw like the like retinas or the eyes, and they'll color them, and like it's so effective because almost the whole series he's like drawn in these deep shadows because he has such a, like a sunken face. It's so good.
Also, on that sort of, it's earlier in the book. I think there's a nice moment, or not nice. There's an interesting moment between him and Angel, and
Oh yeah,
that was a uh, just I loved that.
yeah. It's like he doesn't read. Yeah, it's like I'm glad to see you. You look so well, and he's like he hates Apocalypse, and then like, do you regret anything you've ever done? And when he sees his kids are still alive, and like the world is like just like torn and war, he's like, I regret this. I regret leaving it like this. So funny. He's like crying. There's like tears.
Yeah.
So good.
Let me ask you.
Yeah.
What's going on with him and Richter? I have a side podcast that I want to start called the Shipping News, where you just follow different character ships that are going on, just to stay on top of on top of that. I don't particularly as a reader. I don't. It's a fun part of fandom that I engage. Like I love conventions, but I don't dress up in costume. Although I loved all the people go in costume and I appreciate the costume. It's just not how I do conventions. I think you're the same in that regard. And so like I like all the subplots of like romance and characters who like each other, as everybody does, and like the people who are out there wishing that they're like, I want Rogue and Gambit, and I want so and so and so and so. I want Emma and Scott. No, I want Jean and Scott. Like although I don't get pulled into that, that's not a big part of how I appreciate the books. I love those conversations. I love that part of fandom. I think it's fun. But I sometimes like I don't understand. I don't understand what's going on between Richter and Apocalypse, and it's confusing to me because I feel like you're supposed to read it in a way that there's a tenderness between these two characters. Like, am I wrong? Am I reading into it, or?
I mean, I think, yeah, it seems like there's an extra level of like appreciation between Apocalypse and that, but like, again, he's kind of always someone who's like weird to read as well, because like, I mean, outside of the actual children he has, like he like walks around, and I think that was part of his design was like the cult leader.
Yeah,
everyone's his children.
He's Magneto on steroids. He's like you thought Magneto was a zealot. Come meet the guy who thinks he's God. And I think that's sort of like because I think that scene with Angel, there's a paternalism in it. Like he loves his sort of archangel form, and he's like, oh, I love it when you wear these clothes I bought you. Which I like the paternalism in it is very strong. Whereas I think the Richter stuff is it feels like it's a different thing. And then, which is strange because I feel like there's a little bit of pipe being laid early on, and then he's a family man for the rest. It was weird. There was a weird confluence of things there. But also, I don't follow the I'm not sure if that was like track that was being laid in the X. I mean, is that X Force X Factor?
I think that was the X Factor one.
Yeah. Or if it was just where it's going. Either way, hope they patch things up.
Yeah, it's X Factor one. Yeah, that one is but I like kind of to that. I just the characterization of Apocalypse, and I think Hickman was kind of building that early on. Like, I think one of the big things in Hotbox was bringing those people in onto the council, and they are part of Mutanum. Was interesting. I think he's handled it extremely well. Again, there's multiple times in this he's crying.
Yeah. No, I mean it's his story, right? Like,
yeah.
So ultimately, it's his scheme to sort of connect with this world that he lost, and then I think he sees it as an opportunity to reconnect with these people who now hate him.
So then, to kind of wrap up where we are going to stop. So the status. What is it called? What did I say? Exosword status number 1 is they finally have all the sword bearers, and then they go through like a brief kind of like quick rundown of the Otherworld opponents, and even then, like, they each only get like a page, but they're still really kind of interesting. Again, you meet the counterpoint to Krakoa, Yeah, it must just be Arkoa. And the red woman, uh, and kind of their stake in the fight. And you don't even really find out because like they don't. I'm sure you can translate it. I know people have translated Hickman stuff. And then you meet an awesome guy named Pog,
Pogger Pog.
which his design again is fucking crazy. Like I was like, at first I didn't see what I was like, oh, what am I looking at? But he's like an alligator guy with like stone armor and like an extra hand and feet, and like he's got this big ass like scythe. Like he's awesome. You get this guy. I don't know. They all have names.
So there, I have
There's
it.
a
There's the four horsemen. So
yeah,
war, death. Or wait, it's not the four horsemen. It's war and death. There's
yeah, it's World
Iska,
War One.
Iska the Unbeaten, who's a lady
It's the
who
sister of
cannot lose a fight
which
genetically.
like that little shit like so she's the sister of Genesis
Yeah,
and she cannot lose a fight. So at one point she switches sides to Ameth because she realizes that they can't win that fight. That's fucking so brilliant. Like just a
yeah.
little, and it doesn't really. It plays up to when she comes back to like recruit Genesis or since they show her the truce type thing. But like, holy shit, that's so good.
No, yeah, no. She's a great character, and if I was betting, I'd bet on her. Um, uh, War Death Iska, Pogger Pog, Red Root, as you mentioned, Summoner, who we've already met, Solemn, who we've already met, um, uh, Bay the Blood Moon, who
He's a guy who's just up for a fight, right?
no, that Bay the Blood Moon is I believe it's the big lady, the uh, the big lady with the like. She's a sort of kind of like a
Oh, yeah,
Barda.
yeah.
She got
Yeah,
the
she's
big
got like the hawk.
hood. Yeah, exactly. And Annihilation is one of them. And then my personal favorite is the White Sword, who is just this sort of like he's like a lore character, like in the lore of this battle between. So what we'll learn in the next arc, which we'll save for the next episode, is that they're like we kind of get the like we saw what's been happening on Earth for the past couple thousand years, but we get to see what's been happening in this hellscape that they landed in with Iraqo. Um, and things were not going great there. And there's this sort of like this great champion warrior and his 100 fighting men called the White Sword, who's just he's a guy with a lot of myth around him, and Hickman in this sort of like in this light touch that he has doesn't go too deep in, just like, oh, he's the White Sword who held the White Castle for such and such a number of days. Like we're like, oh yeah, that guy.
Yeah, does
But
he?
my favorite, he's so great. He's a wonderful and for a character who like really is probably just a fill-in character, but like just a great guy. A great time to be with.
At that point, do they mention? I don't want to spoil if we don't get to it, but like the like brief kind of concept around. Yeah, I don't think they. No, okay. I was looking at the. Oh wait, they do maybe. Let's say in the opening, if they mention. Yeah, he wars until the last soldier in his army died. Only began the next day again. With
Yeah,
like, so he like the only thing they mention early on is that he is resurrected, or his army is resurrected each day, and they go out and fight. And they expand like that is like a very much kind of like the doesn't lose a fight, switching sides type thing is an interesting little tidbit. Like he Hickman could kind of leave it there but he like expands upon it into like motivations and characterizations like later on, and that's
Yeah.
kind of where we end up is everyone, I don't know, touches their swords or whatever they do. They are transported to what's that place called? The Starlight Citadel.
Starlight City.
Yeah, with Saturnine, and they are given more tarot cards. Um, yeah, and then I think this issue ends, yes, with Apocalypse coming face to face with um,
Genesis.
Annihilation, which you
Oh,
find out is he takes off the mask, and
yeah,
it is Genesis, which I
yeah.
thought was a cool reveal. Because again, you kind of get like I think when you're reading it in the beginning, I'm like, I get the conflict with the world, but like why now? Like why is this like happening? Why is there this big push? Like what are like because it seems like his children would be, willing to side him to kind of fight off this like there's a lot going on and like you kind of read into motivations, but like it's when it hits this point and in the next issue, which we'll cover next time, you get Genesis's side of the story, and it provides such like kind of nuance to like what was happening, or that like they use the same part and they just retell from her side of the story, and it's fucking great. Like it's so good.
Yeah, no, and I think like she's also a great character. Like she's a great invented
Hmm.
character. The only I will say when I was first reading it, there are a lot of masks in this story, and I was having a hard time keeping track of which masked character. I think she looks a little similar to Death. No, not Death. Death has the dog head. Um,
Pestilence?
is that the one? The one with the big sphere? So like,
No.
I'm not entirely sure which one. It's not War. Either way.
Oh, there's like two essentially kind of like wards of them because there's the fish head lady and there's the two that kind of like
Yeah.
usurp her on the sides. Yeah,
So
they have names. Yeah.
when they did the reveal, I did not. Uh, I had to go back to sort of like, oh, that's Annihilation. Oh, and Annihilation is Jim. Oh, I see, I see, I see. I think this is a great story. I kind of wish like there's a lot of neat devices that he uses. Like when he is it Rachel? I believe it's Rachel goes in. Is it Rachel goes into his mind? I'm sorry. Um,
Rachel
uh,
and
who's
Julian.
recovering? Is it Banshee is recovering? Banshee's recovering. Rachel goes into his mind, and it is through those flashbacks that we learn that Apocalypse was killed, and it's the Horseman who did it, and a bunch of other. And Summoner is a betrayer, and he's the one that killed Rockslide, Rockslide. And although those are great, like those are great ways of telling a story. Like it's Pulp Fiction. It cuts the story up into different. It like for a story that's this rich, it's a little like it does not need to be. Like you don't need any sort of storytelling tricks to make it more confusing, because it is already such like a soup full of different things going on.
Yeah, he's like there's a lot of juggling going on, and again to do it within also other people's series is interesting. I'm just looking at this. I want to share the Apocalypse.
Oh yeah, look at that.
So good. Yeah, and I think again, not having finished it yet, I actually did only read to that. I was going to read more tonight because I actually like really interested, but I was like, I'll stop just so I don't have any like differing thoughts. But as I'm reading it, and I kind of touched on it, like I see a lot of like discourse in comics, rightfully so, like kind of the big two. Like I don't at this point, I don't even read a lot of the big two. More just because there are a lot of other things to read, and like I've kind of weaned off doing single issues just out of like space and time and all that stuff. So like I'll generally wait for trades or collections. Um, but there's sometimes like a lot of people, like it grows old at some point, and I always come back to it. Like I enjoy superhero comics and I enjoy the big two. There's a lot of stuff I like, but like I can understand like the call for like no more superhero comics and stuff like that. Like I get it, and like but like at the same time, comics is so vast and there's so many stories to tell. But I feel like to write off it inherently when someone like like if this was not an X-Men comic, and I think this is often a knock on Hickman, is like this is just a high like high sci-fi fantasy story. Like nothing about this inherently screams X-Men except for like they're able to weave these backstories and expand on those characters within this huge. I mean, you look at like East of West, like that is this could have been that. Like he just
Yeah.
could have put that in there. Like and he's done that like continuously. There's a lot of people who do it. I mean, we talk about a lot about Morrison on there, but I like kind of like what we talk a lot about with like taking on a tie-in story or taking on a mini series, and like there's no excuse for telling a bad story
Yeah.
unless like there could be instances of like rushing it or something like that, but like um you can do something interesting. It's on you to do that. And like it's the same with superhero comics. Like of course there's like cash grabby and boring shit, but like I think to write it all off is is not genuine when there are people like this telling non superhero stories within the superhero world and doing it in a really unique way. Like so, like as I'm reading it, I can just picture like that there's that realm, there's that indie comic realm that like they don't want anything to do with it, which is fine. And then there's the big two, where like I don't want to read your weird like rusty swear stuff. Like I get it, but like it feels dismissive, and it's very much kind of the feels like the discourse generally.
Uh, I totally agree, and I think like when I was younger, like Marvel versus DC was a like a tribe. Like you were either a Marvel guy or a DC guy, which is why like I think I was mostly a DC guy, and my friends were too. So I came to like the X books very late. Um, but then like that's so stupid because if you like a DC book, you're gonna love a Marvel book. You know what I mean? Like whatever you like in one, you're gonna like in the other. Like the other guy is doing the same thing. You know, like maybe in different ways, but like ultimately it's like saying, you know, like, oh, I like chocolate cake, so take all your vanilla cake and go fuck yourself or go screw yourself. Um, you know what I mean? Like if you like cake, you're gonna like this cake. And I think like I find that like if you like these, I can understand like there's a lot of difference. There's a lot of difference between like the one we read last week, the very excellent Man Who Came Down the Stairs, you know, which is a totally different thing, you know, a different beast than what we're talking about here. But like I don't think you have to. No, I completely agree. I think that with a little flexibility, like, and I get so bummed out by the like. Look, I rarely read big two books anymore, so I certainly understand why people are turned off by them. But every now and then, or not every now and then, I think with a surprising regularity, these like a very old, tired convention of like there are these people and they wear tights, like does something so fun, like that you're like, oh god, how can you not love this stuff? Well, let me ask you. So, like, we've been talking about it for so long. Uh, have you enjoyed it?
I mean it was an isn't obvious. I love it. I'm looking at it like longingly on the ground, and I put down. But very much kind of like what I said. Like I enjoy these stories that kind of take the aspects of superheroes and then are able to expand that out into the story the creator wants to tell. Like
Yeah,
I very much think something of like Is it not Absolute Superman? What's the Morrison one?
All
All-Star
Star.
Superman, where like that's a Superman story, but it's like Morrison taking what makes this interesting to him and weaving it through Morrison telling this really interesting story about person and humanity and fate and all those type of things and coming to grips with being the most powerful man and that coming to an end and like what that means and like I like that type of stuff. And obviously there's I like Spider-Man stories and stuff like this, but like I love stuff when you can kind of play with the tropes or you can trick people into like I can't imagine how many people pick up this because it's an X-Men book and like would be like at the same time like, well, I don't want to read Dune. Like this is fucking Dune. Like this is like with your shit and like um it's crazy that they're able to do that. And I again kind of going back to like I can understand hating, Marvel and not hating, but disliking Marvel and DC for the way they pay creators or how they look for talent or the fact that CB what's his name CB
Cebulski. Oh,
Bolski
I
is
wish I knew
still
his Japanese name.
was it Akira.
I
Yeah, how the fact that that guy still has a job and is editing on this book is crazy. Like all that shit is understandable, but to kind of like carpet, not carpet, what's the term? I don't know,
paper over.
whatever. Yeah, like to just say that all superhero comics are boring and do that, I think is very dismissive to some creators who are actively trying to tell interesting stories.
Oh, totally.
This is one of them.
I couldn't agree more. Um, uh, um, yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I think that this is like again, um, Batman: The Dark Knight, the movie, the Jared, or not Jared, Heath Ledger as the Joker.
Oh, yeah.
Boy, bite my tongue. Like that could have been it could have been a perfectly good like Gotham Police Department procedural where they're trying to take down this lunatic. And you could have taken Batman completely out of it, and then you still got like a thrilling story. And I think like with this, like you were saying, like the space opera stuff, I would have tuned in just for that. It's kind of a nice dimension to add in the X-Men. I think it crowds the story a little bit because you have to incorporate so many people, and I think like I wouldn't take anything out because I wouldn't take anything out because I enjoy all of it, even the weird, King Jamie and Saturnine stuff. But it's a big, but that's fine. Like it's fun. It's not. I mean, like when we get into the contest, I think the contest becomes for all this ramp up. There's some interesting choices that they make.
It'd be great for the podcast portion where I drop a skull because I'm trying to put it in Apocalypse's hand.
So, all right, we will be back to do the second half. Also, I didn't get a chance to go on about Peak Sword. Are we in Peak Sword, Kyle?
I mean, we see 20 swords. That's what I think is misleading. You're telling me X of swords, and there's XX of swords.
It's deuce of swords.
Those swords are fucking cool. I'm more interested in.
No! The minute I saw the other team, I was like, oh no, I don't. Screw you, Krakoa. I now stand. I stand Araco.
Those designs are so good.
Oh, I'm phenomenal. So, do we want to talk about our? Shall we wrap up? And do we want to talk about our giveaway?
Yeah, we definitely should talk about it as we record it because we as always, to not prepare and then talk about how we want to do it, which is on brand.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and before that, obviously we record these. I think we're on a pretty regular schedule with Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern, every other week. That there isn't a pages and panels, but you can always check on our Twitters, either at pages_panels or at Kyle Overkill. I don't think there's an underscore. Yeah, at Kyle Overkill. And Jax is at.
The villainous.
So usually the week before we'll start to talk about what we're going to do. Obviously, this one will be touching back on the second half, the end of X of Swords, and then the following one we'll go back to kind of explore some either different or more independent or older books or whatever we feel like talking about. But yeah, as we're so there's a video and then the audio one. Based on the numbers, I know we get a lot of listens on the audio one, which is cool. But also, if you want to come join us when we do it, part of us doing it this way anyway is easier for me to edit. But we would like at some point, people to join us, chat, and all that type of stuff. So hopefully, get better about posting what we're going to be talking about earlier on, so people have time to do that. But if you are listening to the audio version on the YouTube, which is Pages and Panels, you can join us live. But as an incentive, because uh, Jack is better at promoting and marketing and all that stuff, we are going to start doing some giveaways. What should we do? Should we do like a question or
Well,
something?
here I'm on the Pages and Panels iTunes page. I am a podcast subscriber. I get all mine from iTunes. I guess some people get them off Stitcher. You're on Anchor, right? So who are the other?
So yeah, Anchor is our like host, I guess, and then it is distributed like it's RSS feed through. So you can listen on iTunes or Spotify or any of the major ones. It is available on.
So I got iTunes pulled up and I'm pulling up Spotify. I'm looking at our ratings and reviews. Look, guys, we love you. You love us. But we got to like make it official. We got to like put something down on paper. You got to slap a ring on it. Like these customer reviews, first of all, Pages and Panels has 5 stars. Like you go look, it's got 5 stars. That's incredible. That's 5 stars out of 5 stars, by the way, smart asses. We want to keep those 5 stars, but we want to get more. Now, I know this sounds like we're greedy. Like you've already got 5 stars. What more do you want? But the fact of the matter is, like, this stuff helps. Like, look, like, no one's getting rich doing this. Like, no one got into podcasting or comics because they wanted to, like, put a bowling alley in their mansion. But like you want to like, so this is not like a cash grab. It's just like, hey, it helps the profile of the podcast. The podcast reaches more people. If the podcast reaches more people, then like it gets bigger, and then you can do more things. You can do more things. Like it's like more fun content. So like the reviews help. Like they help iTunes. It sort of helps put the the podcast in the algorithm. It sort of like it's stuff that helps, and it's free. Like you don't have to do anything. Like you go on, you leave a review, you throw us a couple stars. 5 is a nice number, and then like the world is a little better. You leave the world in better shape than when you found it. So I get it. You guys are busy. Like we've all got stuff. So we're sweetening the deal. We're saying like, look at this beautiful hardbound edition of Dracula Motherfucker. My apologies if you're under 19. Alex DeCampi, Erica Henderson. Look at this beautiful fucking art. Like, if you enjoyed, what's Jim Rupp's book? Is it Aphrodisiac? Like, this is a great. It's a beautiful book. It's this retails $16.99 from Image. You get it for free. All you got to do is throw us some stars and say like, hey, I like these knuckleheads. So on our customer reviews on iTunes, the last review is from 2020. That's last year. Like, it's a whole new year. We gotta up to date, dudes. But this guy, he knew what was going on. He threw us 5 stars. So just leave us a review. So any reviews between now and our next the 2 weeks hence, when we get back together for the part 2 of X, we'll take all those reviews. We'll put them in a hat. We'll draw one. Whoever we draw, we're going to send this book to them, and they get a book, and the satisfaction of knowing they're supporting indie comics journalism, and we give a little payola. No, we spread comics out to the people who love them. So just leave us. Go ahead.
I think that's part of it too. Is this again? I think the appeal of the stuff me and you do. Obviously there's Page and Panels, which is the interview side of the show, interviewing creators. The whole idea behind me and you doing this was wanting to talk about books we love that we might not otherwise have kind of avenues or venues to talk about, because like we said, comics is so wide reaching. There's so many kind of rabbit holes you can go down, so we like to do that and kind of share things with each other and listeners. So we're going to kind of try and aim the giveaways around that. There might be times if I have stuff like that is kind of more mainstream, sure, but I would like to kind of highlight some of the more obscure stuff that we generally will talk about, and other podcasts will talk about it later on. So we'll do that. I think that will be kind of the avenue for the giveaways, either kind of random stuff, weird stuff, or stuff we have that it will never just be, I think, kind of, I don't know,
baseball cards.
Yeah, I mean they're cool, but stuff. I don't know.
No, so yes. So if anyone wants to leave a review. Leave us a couple stars. If you leave us 1 star, look, we'll send the book. We're people of our word, but watch your back. Sleep with one eye open, maybe 2.
And I think
now I'm threatening people. I'm real bad at the pitch.
Yeah, I think that works. Yeah, I think to expand upon that, if you're okay with it, I think obviously with the iTunes, but if you use a different platform, say I know on Spotify, I think you just subscribe, or something else. If that's the case, you can maybe screenshot it and just tweet at us. It's your subscribed thing, and we'll include that for the week. And then maybe.
Oh yeah. So this is our first time out. Subscribe on YouTube, or follow on Spotify, and I think.
I mean, same with any of those. Or if you come in to the chat on when we do that week's live, and you comment that you're here, we'll include that in the week's collection of names. So. Obviously, I like talking to Jack. He's fine. But the idea is we can, the more we can talk to people about comics, again, that we love. And the fun thing about me and Jack is Jack, it's like, exposes me to a lot of things I haven't read. And that's all I want, because then I have more excuses to buy things and read things. And that's what I like about comics, is like, there's so many things out there I don't know. And to find those is great. But that's the idea.
Same. Like, I had no idea prior to today that Big Dick Fight Island was out there, just waiting 1 plane trip away from.
You could be there any minute.
So same. In fact, I think Kyle has a broader reach of comics. Every time we have an episode, I'm thrilled and also shocked. How can I not know about this?
I mean, the show, where all our stuff is, but always important to Jack. Where can they find your stuff?
Oh yeah, so at the Villainist, you from there, like find me there, and then all my stuff is out from there.
Yeah, and so you can join us next week again. We'll be live, or the audio version will be up a few days after, either on Friday or Saturday. But yeah, that was this episode of Greatest Comic Book of All Time, the Dick Fighting Island version. All right, I'll end there.